This is a quickly made 20-slide video that provides tips on how to teach using Zoom. It's different than the videos focusing on how just to use Zoom or Zoom functionality. I created it in the context of the coronavirus global pandemic because I wanted to send a beacon of support to my fellow educators who are wandering through the wilderness right now, trying to figure out how to teach differently. I've been teaching in a synchronous classroom with Zoom for 3 years, so I wanted to give you a few tips about things I've used to create an engaging, accountable, predictable, and efficient classroom experience for my university students. Beyond just providing my own ideas, I've asked some of my previous students to share with me what they would like teachers to know about teaching well with Zoom. As you each learn more about this modality of delivering an educational experience, I encourage you too to create shareable content for the global team of educators out there. First, some encouragement for educators. Then I'll share 6 broad tips with specifics. These include 1. Checking in with yourself and your students about the use of technology. 2. Have some classroom routines to ground the experience and provide structure, stability, and predictability. 3. Use video effectively to create class connection and class flow. 4. Attend to the audio thoughtfully. 5. Enrich participation and community learning through the chat box. 6. Try breakout rooms for small groups and deeper peer-to-peer learning and participation. As educators, we have an important role to play in being a stabilizing force for the younger generation right now. What an honor. So even if it's your first few attempts and they seem glitchy, if you do nothing else, the simple value of providing a stable, reliable, safe space for your students to gather virtually cannot be discounted. That would be a victory and is a very important job right now. There is absolutely no need to overachieve here. The goal here is practice over perfection. What a great reminder for us about how our students are feeling every time we ask them to try something new. You don't need to know everything. To avoid feelings of overwhelm, limit yourself to trying one new activity per week or per class. If something goes wrong during class, just pause and take a deep breath. And remember that many of us are muddling through it all in the very same moment you are. Number 1, check in with yourself and your students about the use of technology. Be patient with yourself, your students, and the technology, especially in the first classes, because you will all be learning together. Everyone gathered will not be experiencing the same emotions, and so it's important not to make assumptions, other than assuming the best. Put together a student guide to share expectations for behavior during a virtual class. Plan to spend 15 to 20 minutes of the first class simply walking through the technical side of things and discussing these expectations. Keeping everyone on the same page will be crucial for a smooth experience. Greet students individually when they join class. It's a great way to maintain engagement and double check that each student's sound is working correctly when they enter the room. Hello, Sophia. Where are you joining us from today? You could also ask a quick question on a PowerPoint related to a reading, an assignment, or the last class for folks to answer in the chat box when they arrive. Hint, if you type it in the chat box before students arrive into the room, they will not see it. You can also hold virtual office hours to help with technology. You can utilize Zoom's waiting room feature to bring in one student at a time to your meeting room. You could direct students to the test page on Zoom to test and troubleshoot audio and video. As a general rule of thumb, slow down. Allow for the pause before and after speaking to allow all to have a chance to contribute and reflect. 2, have some classroom routines to ground the experience and provide structure, stability, and predictability. For example, have consistent check-ins at the beginning or end of class that they can count on. It could be Write one sentence in the chat box starting with, I think, or I feel, or I wonder. Another option, a daily share of one good piece of news, like, I got a good grade back, or the internet has been working well. Or simply ask them every day to type in where they're calling in from. For structure, ask students to please set a profile photo. The photo will show if they have their video turned off. And set a standard for how students name themselves, perhaps first name and location. Frequent Zoom polls can keep students engaged because they have to process instead of just listen. When most of them have the correct answer, you can simply summarize why. When many have the wrong answer, you can stop and explain. At the end of class, stop sharing any documents like PowerPoints and ask students to click on Gallery View so you can see everyone. Then ask everyone to wave. You could also unmute everyone at once for a fun cacophony of goodbyes. Often people will laugh, smile, and enjoy that part. I like to play music from my class co-created Spotify list as students arrive into the room. You can play the music, click on Screen Share, and then at the top of that window, click Advanced, and then Computer Sound Only, then click Share and Exit. There you have music playing in your classroom. Number 3, use video effectively to create class connection and class flow. Zoom has 2 modes, webinar mode, everyone else is off camera and muted, or Zoom meeting mode, which is the mode I use to create a dynamic, inclusive classroom. Some video hints for your own video quality. Look directly into your camera while you speak. Think about having light in front of your face from a window or a lamp so your face is clear in the screen. Think about what is behind you so it's not distracting or too revealing. You could have fun picking a virtual background if you don't have an appropriate backdrop at home. Let students know that in the upper right of their screen, they can choose between speaker view and gallery view. I always recommend to my students that they choose gallery view because then they can see all faces like you would in a classroom. It feels more like a community. Along those lines, to maintain engagement, I recommend that you try to bring back gallery view often rather than staying on screen sharing all the time. A hint, though, to give your students about seeing what you are sharing on your screen. If they click on View at the top, they can select Fit to Screen to see a full slide or document. They can also choose to see video too if they pick Side by Side in that same tab. You can share and annotate PowerPoints, videos, documents, web pages. You can also use the whiteboard function too. You can have fun with video, including inviting a guest speaker who lives across the country, or another fun thing to do is to share a statement about the content and then ask students to show how much they agree or disagree by getting closer to the screen for more agreement or further away from their screen for more disagreement. But the most important suggestion I have for video comes from one of my former students. Require all videos to be on. This makes the classroom way more engaging and accountable. If students are having bandwidth problems, they can ask permission to stop sharing their video for that time. Related to bandwidth issues, you can use the record function and upload a video online. Students who have technical difficulties can access the recording later if you share it. 4, attends to audio thoughtfully. I like to have everyone muted as they enter the room. You can choose this in your settings. Previous students asked me to tell you that it can be very distracting if folks are not muted. You actually have the power, all class, to mute and unmute people. The simplest way is by looking at the very useful Managing Participants tab. When you click on it, you can see a list of everyone who is in the room with you. You will see a mic icon next to each name, which you can click on to mute or unmute. You can also access the Mute All button at the bottom of this window. I keep this window open on the side at all times because it will also show any electronically raised hands or icon responses like yes, no, or applause. You can direct students to the Participants tab for them to find the raise hand, yes, no, and applause icons. You can see electronically raised hands in the corner of student videos too, but I think it's easy to miss them, especially if you're sharing your screen and can't really see all the mini videos. Besides you having the power to mute and unmute students, they can personally mute and unmute themselves, but not each other. If you're showing a video, be sure to click on Share Computer Audio when you share your screen. The most important tip I have related to audio: give specific instructions for questions and discussion. Plan questions ahead of time and choose whether you'd like answers through chat, voice, hand gestures, or icons. Here are some examples. Type a sentence into the chat box with your favorite idea from the reading. Raise your electronic hand if you have an answer to that question. Hold up your fist through 5 to share your comfort with this topic. Fist meaning 0 understanding, through 5 fingers meaning mastery. If you agree with this statement, click your yes green checkmark icon. If you disagree, click your no red X icon. 5. Enrich participation and community learning through the chat box. Establish norms about how the chat box will or not be used at the beginning of class. If you can't manage chat and lecture at the same time, just let students know that. A lot can get lost in the chat box when professors don't establish a norm at the beginning. Towards that end, the chat feature has different settings for who gets to chat to whom. To find the settings as the host, click on the 3-dot icon on the right. You may want to choose Everyone publicly, which stops students from having their own private side conversations with each other during class. However, private messages can be helpful for students who want to ask you a direct private question. I love using the chat box because it creates equity of participation. Everyone can respond to a question, not just those students who feel comfortable speaking aloud in class. I actually miss this function when I'm teaching my in-person classes now. You can use the chat box for short responses from each student or for full class discussions. For short chat answers that keep students engaged, you can ask a simple question like, in the chat box, rate on a scale from 1 to 5 your comfort with X, understanding of Y, agreement with Z. It helps if teachers read aloud what is or has been said in the chat box. It keeps everyone tracking what's happening and honors the contributions. Thank the students by name as they start to populate the chat box, because it encourages others to do so. For example, thank you, Fatima, for contributing to the conversation. Remember, there will be a delay in the chat box after a question is asked because it takes time for students to think and then to type and then to submit. It is okay to have some silence and to take some deep breaths. For class discussions, encourage students to directly respond to each other or to ask each other questions by using @name. You can model this for them by participating in the class chat and @naming certain students. It may be helpful to know that you can link or share documents in the chat, like comprehension questions or an article. I recommend that you save the chat because you may want to review it later. Chat comes with timestamps, so you can also use it to take attendance by asking students to type here at various points during class to ensure they're online throughout class. 6. Use breakout rooms for small groups and deeper peer-to-peer learning and participation. You can place students in small discussion groups using breakout rooms assigned randomly, which takes only seconds, or manually, which takes longer but gives you full control about who's in the room. Make sure to enable this feature ahead of time. I like to ask groups to assign themselves roles in breakout groups. Having specific roles can help them stay focused and accountable. The roles I ask each group to cover are the writer, who takes notes and posts them to the chat when the class comes together, the reporter, who speaks to the entire class when the groups are finished meeting. I ask them to all raise their electronic hands when they get back into the big room so I can call on them more easily. The enricher is expected to bring a different perspective to the conversation, and the mover is expected to keep people on task and moving through the discussion questions at a Goldilocks pace that's not too fast or too slow. When all groups are called back, I have the writer type everyone's roles in the chat box. I let my students know that I will keep track of this in an Excel document to be sure that it isn't always the same students playing the same roles. Groups of 4 to 5 usually work best for everyone because everyone has a chance to talk, but no one ends up in a group alone if people have internet glitches. If you want groups to work with a document or a slide or specific question set, you need to upload it before you put them into groups. Click on the chat box and use the file icon on the far right to upload the document. Tell the students to download the document to their device before they break off. Also, before I release them into groups, I usually tell them what time I will be calling them back into our big room. It helps them manage their time as a small group. You can broadcast a message to each group, such as move to question 2 or 5 more minutes. If you want to, and the group time is long enough, you can pop in and out of different groups to check in. I suggest that you get in touch with 2 to 3 other educators to run through some tech transitions, taking turns as presenter and students. It's a great chance to learn from each other. And you can always ask students for gentle feedback or for their ideas for class participation and engagement. But as a reminder, there's absolutely no need to overachieve here. If you just role model what it looks like to try something new and to stay calm if something goes wrong, this is a valuable lesson. If this was helpful, like it and share it with a friend. Now, over to you. In the comments, share anything you are trying that seems to be working in your Zoom classrooms.